What's up, guys? Welcome to Red and Gold. Today I'm joined by my co-host Ben Meyerson. How you doing today, Ben?
I'm doing well, Amin. It's a playoff week for the 49ers, so you got to be happy about that. Great football in week 18. I know I certainly enjoyed that. And hey, man, we got super wild card weekend coming up Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Yeah.
I'm a 49ers fan, but first of all, I'm a football fan. So I'm very excited for this weekend. This is where things get really interesting. You find out who's good, who's great, and who's bad. I mean, it's going to be a fun weekend for sure. I think so. I'm very excited about this football weekend. What's up, Ekim? How you doing?
What's up? What's up, Ekim? It's football. It's playoff. It's football. Monday also this week. I know. There's Monday night football usually every week, but this is playoffs on a
Super
Monday
wild card
night.
weekend.
Yeah,
It's
super wild card weekend. Exactly. Usually it's just wild card weekend, but this time it's super wild card weekend.
yeah.
So it's
Well, and
definitely
hey,
gonna be way more exciting.
the 49ers probably got one of the better scheduled games, right? Because if you have to play on Sunday night or Monday night, that turnaround is even tougher. And obviously, it makes a little difference. But hey, take every advantage you can. So, yeah, 4:30 my time, Saturday or Sunday. Sorry. I'm looking forward to it. It's a classic matchup. I mean, I know, even you. I was gonna say you're a little young for this, but even man, myself, I'm a little young for this 49ers Cowboys matchup. Really,
Yep.
it precedes me. But seeing the history of it and just understanding everything that's going on, man, I'm really excited for this week. This is one of the biggest anticipated games I felt in a while. I'm just excited. It's going to be a great weekend.
Yep. Especially Niners Cowboys, because this is one of those games, right? Because obviously, probably our parents, our elders, they probably all seen the Niners Cowboys rivalry, especially if
Oh yeah.
our relatives are Niners fans. My uncles, my parents, they've seen this rivalry go down. But this is the first time where I get to see the Niners Cowboys rivalry in
Oh
a
yeah.
playoff game. In the playoffs, so it's
I
definitely gonna
mean,
be
this is the
exciting.
first meaningful game I feel like either of us are really going to see between the Cowboys and the 49ers. Yeah, this is going to be a good one. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Good. Get Deebo's MVP votes, or I will.
I wish I could. I
Deebo,
wish I could.
Deebo, in all honesty, should win Offensive Player of the Year this year. I don't even want to hear Jonathan. Jonathan Taylor's name should be in consideration, but I know it's not going to happen because
Well,
obviously
first
Jonathan
of all,
Taylor.
you're
But
talking about the wrong player he's going to lose to, man. He's going to lose to Cooper Cup is who he's going to lose to because
dude,
I,
Deebo just has a way bigger impact in the game than a guy like
hey,
Cooper Cup. Cooper Cup
no,
is a
no,
beast. So is Jonathan
you,
Taylor, but
you know what I'll say about the Deebo Cooper Cup thing, and I know you have your topic up here, Justin Jefferson. I think from a national perspective, even though a lot of people are excited and know how good Deebo is, right? I think the fact that Cooper Cup had that breakout season kind of overshadowed what was going on a little bit. And if Cooper Cup had a breakout season last year, 1,700 yards, and then did this again, people would be way more excited about what Deebo is doing right
mm-hmm.
now. Well, at least from a national offensive player of the year type of perspective. I think, it's all about narratives with a lot of these awards. Stats matter, sure, but at the end of the day, if you don't have the story and the games to go along with it that people think of and know, it's tough. And with a guy like Cooper Cup, I mean, I think Deebo is a better player than Cooper Cup, but you cannot deny what Cooper Cup did this season. I think the craziest stat I saw, was that on the season he had 460 something fantasy points total,
That's the
and
Cooper Cup in like the fifth or sixth round. What a steal for me.
man, but he was first, and second was Mahomes at like 400. And then fourth or fifth was Deebo at like 325 fantasy points. So you want to talk about Cooper Cup like raising the bar? Man, he what he did this season was just incredible. And I think he had so many of those big impact games early on, right? I mean, I talked about how it's
Mhm.
about the narrative, right? Think about how many big games he had at the beginning of the season. I mean, even on the national games where he did play the 49ers, like he didn't have one bad game this season, right? He didn't have any duds. This is a guy who you just, if they don't give him the award, I don't know why they create this award, even though I think Deebo is very deserving. Like I said, you just follow the narratives, and it can't be anyone but Cooper Cup. I think it'd be a crime to give it to anyone else, really.
I mean, Cooper Cup obviously he had a great season. No doubting that he was like couple 10 20 yards short of breaking Calvin Johnson's record. Who Calvin Johnson's quarterback was Matthew Stafford, and so was Cooper Cup this year. But just the all around impact that Deebo had this year, right, on the Niners, right? If we're just talking about a
Hey,
pure offensive player, not MVP, but just whole offensive player, who's the best offensive player? Cooper Cup, what he did was amazing this year. But what Deebo Samuel did, he plays the same position right now. The Niners do use him as a running back in certain situations, but at the same time, you look at when they drafted him, it didn't say running back; it said wide receiver, and he's the only player, right, wide receiver in the league that's used in the backfield as a running back. And what he did on using his legs, lining up in the backfield as a running back, also
it was
it's
really
just
impressive.
insane to me. 300 something
Yeah.
yards,
Oh my God.
six, eight touchdowns, just
Well, and
dominating on the ground. Also,
I wanted to touch on one thing you just mentioned, Amin, which was that you talked about you've never seen any other team put their play in the backfield like that. Well, I'll say this. I think teams are starting to, at least, maybe not at the same rate that 49ers are, but just like the way you saw after 2019 and 18 and 17, teams start to add jet sweeps and all the motion that we see now across the league, where you watch any team now, it looks like a Shanahan team from 3 years ago. It just does. Um, I think a lot of teams, especially, I mean, the first one that comes to mind, and this is just I'm thinking fantasy football right now, but Amon-Ra St. Brown was getting carries out of the backfield for the Lions. There are plenty of teams who have started figuring out there are creative ways you can use your players. I think Kyle's just ahead of the curve, and I think everyone else is just always going to be catching up to him. And 2-3 years from now, you'll see teams use Deebo or see teams use players the way the 49ers use Deebo, just the same way the 40 or teams are doing what the 49ers did 2-3 years ago.
mm-hmm.
I, I think Kyle's very creative, but to me, the best quality of an offensive coordinator is being able to either create the best ideas that other people steal or steal the best ideas, right? And that's how I've always felt with Shanahan, is he does that so well, right? But yeah, those other skill position guys, the wide receivers, the tight ends getting handoffs, you've seen a little bit more of it at the end of the season, like I mentioned, but I think it's going to keep going up and up and up and up. And really, to me, it's just about utilizing those skill position guys who you can get more out of them at that running back position. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I mentioned, right, is a great example of that. But think about Rondale Moore, the way the Cardinals were using
Yeah.
him so much early in the season. I know he hasn't got as many snaps recently, but it's interesting to see how these offensive coordinators use these chess pieces now, because the more and more we get into the future of football, the more you see these elite athletes who otherwise would just be a running back or just a receiver or just one or the other. The team wouldn't move them around, not even into the slot. Now you're seeing players move all over the place, and teams get really creative. And you know what? To bring this back around, Dallas has one of those guys too, Cedric Wilson. I believe is it Cedric his first name?
Yep.
Wilson.
Cedric Wilson. Yep.
He is a really good football player. And it's going to be really interesting to see how they use him against the 49ers for misdirection. Because like I said, teams are starting to catch up, and yeah, Kyle's peak of the food chain, right? But
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean everyone else can't see what he's doing. So it's interesting to see how everyone's starting to copy Kyle. And I'm telling you, 2 years from now, there are going to be a lot of teams using guys like Deebo, or at least trying to do what the 49ers did with Deebo this season. Because hey,
Yep.
you can get that sort of advantage. That's a hell of an advantage.
Yep.
That's,
Without further, I
that's not the
appreciate
real
I
East Bay
appreciate the
Chris in the comments, is it? That's not the real
I
East
think
Bay
that, I
Chris.
don't know if that is or not, but
That's
that
not
might
his
be. But
logo.
that's what I was thinking at first. I was like, did East Bay Chris change his logo? Do I not know
No.
about that? I appreciate the comment, Omar. But let's jump right into it. We already talked about, Deebo and Cooper Kupp, but this is an interesting topic that not that many people have been talking about. Is Justin Jefferson versus Deebo Samuel? Because obviously we know Justin Jefferson, amazing rookie year, and then this year also has an amazing year. Once again, some people thought, okay, sophomore slump. No, he had an amazing year.
Just as
Once
productive.
again, people are calling him, some people consider him to be a top 2 receiver in football behind Cooper Kupp, and some people even call him the best receiver in football. So who do you think is the better receiver, Justin Jefferson or Deebo Samuel?
Interesting the way you asked that. I think Deebo Samuel is a better football player, but I think Justin Jefferson is the better receiver. And I actually don't have a lot of doubt about that. I think, Deebo, for as dynamic as he is and as great as he is as a football player, he's not as a refined receiver as a Justin Jefferson is. I mean, look, you see how good Jamar Chase is doing this season, right? There's a reason that Justin Jefferson was the number 2 receiver to him. To me, you go back and you look at Justin Jefferson's history, and this was a guy who just man, people should have been all over in that draft. I never understood it. I always thought he was going to be a superstar. And Ekim, you know what? You're right. Jamar Chase is a bit better than Justin Jefferson. I think he's probably just a little more athletically talented than Jefferson is. But in terms of pure receivers, route running, doing all the little things right, I'm sorry. There's been no second-year receiver that has impressed me more than Justin Jefferson recently. He just does everything you want him to. He just doesn't drop the ball. He's an elite receiver, and he really does deserve to be that. I think he's the second best receiver or third best receiver in the league after Devontae Adams. But yeah, so I think right now I do prefer Justin Jefferson, the receiver, but I think I would prefer Deebo Samuel, the football player. And quite honestly, you know what? I'd be really interested to see how the two would have been if they would have switched their situations. I always think about that from a basketball perspective. Hey, switch these two guys who would have won more championships. But think about it from this, right? Imagine Justin Jefferson playing with Kittle, Ayuk, and then having a dynamic play caller like Shanahan versus a guy like Jefferson has to, I don't want to say overcome Kirk Cousins, because Kirk Cousins is a very good quarterback, but that organization has been all over the place. One year their offensive line is figured out, one year it isn't. They have new they haven't really been super consistent with their play callers. I just so Cordero Patterson. Yeah, that's who you're thinking of, Corey. But you know what? I think Deebo has proven that he's the better athlete. Look, and if they would have been in other situations, you would be saying, hey, no doubt Justin Jefferson's better, right? Like, you wouldn't even think about it. But because I think Deebo has such a dynamic, smart play call, Deebo has that play caller who really knows how to utilize him and get the most out of him. That only helps a guy like Deebo, right? Versus a guy like Justin Jefferson. I just don't know if he's getting that same support. And I think you could argue that he isn't, right? And I don't think he's necessarily even in a bad situation, but for Deebo's own sake, between Emmanuel Sanders, all the support that they've had around in this offensive room, Deebo's had more of the benefit of the doubt, right? In the sense that there's a bigger room for error. With Justin Jefferson, he's never hurt. He is never inconsistent. He always comes to play. He never has an off game. Like, I just think Justin Jefferson is the prime example of a guy you would want as a young receiver on a rookie contract.
Justin Jefferson is a beast. We all know this, right? Justin Jefferson had 2 great seasons, rookie year and also his sophomore year, which is this year. 2 excellent seasons for a receiver. Now, obviously, Deebo just have that advantage where he has Kyle Shanahan, who some people call an offensive genius. But on the other hand, when you look at Justin Jefferson, you said it, Kirk Cousins. Is he a clutch quarterback? No, but is he a good quarterback? Yeah, he put up some good numbers this year. Better numbers than Jimmy Garoppolo put up this year. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo was hurt. A lot of us can agree. Who would we rather have, Kirk Cousins or Jimmy Garoppolo? A lot of us would say Kirk Cousins over
I
Jimmy.
think every single human being, other than the insane ones, would say Kirk Cousins, right? But I mean, and I think I know where you're going. I think the thing with this, right, is while there is the disadvantage of having Jimmy Garoppolo as your quarterback, I don't think that necessarily hurts Deebo's value as a player. Because I think in one sense, right, there's the opportunities you don't see with Deebo, the deep shots, the things you would prefer to see a
The deep
classic
shots.
receiver do. But at the same time, because they can only work a certain part of the field and they're working that part of the field so often, and Deebo's so elite in that part of the field, when you give him that open space, when you have a guy who sets people up for yak like Kyle Shanahan does, to me, that's such a bigger advantage than compared to Kirk Cousins versus Jimmy Garoppolo, because I think schematically, no one is better at setting up their player than Kyle is for Deebo Samuel. I wholeheartedly believe that. I don't think there's any better combination of that in the league. Player and scheme skill set. I think Deebo is he's like a perfect key for a keyhole, right? Versus I think a guy like Justin Jefferson, it works, but that's not because of what the Vikings are doing. That's because Justin Jefferson is so great.
Okay, let me break it down again. Okay, Deebo Samuel, right? People have been saying in the comments, right? Like the key thing, Deebo doesn't need Jimmy to be a star quarterback. We obviously understand that, but I still feel like when you have a guy like Kirk Cousins who can throw the ball downfield, who can throw, make throws in tight windows, who can do stuff that Jimmy Garoppolo has never been able to do in his entire career, that definitely boosts Justin Jefferson a little bit. But the only reason why now Justin Jefferson, you could say obviously he's a better route runner, he's better just like a pure receiver. But Deebo Samuel's first position is receiver. It's not a running back. Deebo Samuel's first position, he got drafted, and next to his position, Deebo Samuel, North Carolina, it says wide receiver when he got drafted because he's a wide receiver. Deebo Samuel this year has 1,400 receiving yards. Some games he was just popping off. Justin Jefferson, on the other hand, has 1,600 yards and 10 touchdowns. So obviously 200 yards more. But if Deebo Samuel wasn't used in the backfield like a running back and was just purely used as a receiver, I think Deebo Samuel would have had closer numbers and probably would have the same amount of yards
Yeah,
as Justin Jefferson. But the only
but
reason that's not the case is because Deebo Samuel is used in the backfield. He's a dynamic player that you can line up in the backfield and he could take it, 30 yards as a running back and take it to the house and score a touchdown. And even if you look at it on Sunday last week, right? Deebo Samuel was clutch. Deebo Samuel put the team on his back and he made plays like yards after the catch. Jimmy Garoppolo throw him football. He would go 30, 40 yards, break tackles. He would make plays. He would come through last week. Like, Juwan Jennings had an amazing game, but if Deebo was out that game, we wouldn't have beaten the Rams. One reason we were close, we beat the Rams, was because Deebo Samuel had those electric plays where you had that whatever slant, and Deebo Samuel would take it 30, 40 yards and get a huge gain. And he's leading the league in yards after the catch because he's just such a great player.
yeah.
Justin Jefferson, obviously, I would say as a receiver, just a receiver, obviously Justin Jefferson has better stats because he's used only purely as a receiver. But with Deebo Samuel, look at Deebo Samuel and all the
Yeah,
things that
I
Deebo
mean,
Samuel
but
can
I
do.
think you're focusing on the wrong thing. I don't really care about that production perspective because I think looking at their impact on a football game, what a guy like Justin Jefferson does, especially, I think to me the most impressive part about this has been, look, you saw what Justin Jefferson did last year, right? And things were actually going relatively well for the Vikings. I mean, I know their win-loss wasn't as great, but Dalvin was very healthy for the most part. Or he was healthy, and even when he wasn't, Alexander Madison is a great replacement. Guys like Thielen, really well. That offensive line was better last season, right? This year, the Vikings, I mean, between missing Dalvin, Adam Thielen, who had never missed time before, Kirk Cousins missed games, and Justin Jefferson doesn't drop off. In fact, he has even better production to me. That's more what I'm focused on because I I think from Deebo Samuel's perspective, like I said, I think he's a better football player. And if that's what you were getting to, Amin, I'm 100% there with you on that. But I, I think the difference between Justin Jefferson and Deebo Samuel and the way people view them is that, like I said, Deebo is in a perfect situation for him. I truly believe that. I think, like I said, from the schematic standpoint, but also, I mean, we know Jimmy Garoppolo isn't going to push the ball downfield, but with how electric Deebo is with the yak, you don't necessarily need to do that for him to be a great football player. Yeah, it would make him better and you'd put him in a better position to make more plays, but he doesn't need those opportunities to be a great playmaker. And in fact, he thrives in that short, intermediate, less than 15 yards part of the field, which is where Jimmy's going to target him the most, obviously. So I think it's actually just a good mashup of quarterback skill set, scheme, timing, the players around him. For me, for Deebo, it's the perfect storm, and that's not a knock on Deebo. That's just that's the reality of their situation. Versus a guy like Justin Jefferson, to me, it's like you could have given him that pass for having that sophomore slump, but he didn't even have that. He got better than he did last season, and the team around him is crumbling. The organization is crumbling. His head coach is spent the entire last 3 weeks of the season talking about the when you heard him answer stuff at the press conference and heard him talk to media, he knew he was gone and he just didn't care. And between that, or I think they even asked him after the game on Sunday before he got fired, or Saturday, whatever it was, that, hey, did you know Justin Jefferson was this many yards away from breaking Randy Moss's single season record? And basically what happened was the Vikings were up big on the Bears, and they could have just,
and Mike Zimmer was like, I don't care.
they could have just run the game out. And Jefferson was this close to breaking Randy Moss's record, and he was like, yeah, I just don't care. He's like, yeah, I don't care about that stuff. So what I'm saying, Amin, is that to me, and this isn't a knock on Deebo Samuel, he has gotten every, except injuries, he has gotten every advantage you would want as a young receiver in the league. Justin Jefferson has had the complete opposite, and he's thrived and gotten better. So I just think I'm not, trying to put one or the other over like that. I'm just saying I think Justin Jefferson deserves even more credit than people are giving him right now, because I think he is as good as people say. But then overcoming what he's overcame, I mean, like think about a guy like Cooper Kupp, right? Up until he gets Matthew Stafford, he's not putting up that kind of production. And now Cooper Kupp did get better this season, right? But he also had Jared Goff throwing to him before. And look, Jared Goff is awful. He is a bottom 5-8 quarterback in the league. To me, yeah, Jimmy G isn't Kirk Cousins, but
can't you make the same argument for Deebo with Jimmy G?
No. But Jared Goff, that stark difference, like, of what we're talking about, I'm telling you, the difference between Kirk Cousins and Jimmy G is much smaller than the difference between Jimmy G and Jared Goff, because yeah, Jimmy G can't quite do everything Kirk Cousins does, but he still does a lot of what he does already. Jared Goff is just awful. Like there's just no getting around that. With Jimmy, he's frustrating in moments, but then he has other moments, right, to make up for some of those, even though I don't think it completely makes up for it. Jared Goff just has awful play out after awful play. So look, I don't think there's that much of a difference between the two quarterbacks. And when you really look at it from a schematic standpoint and what Justin Jefferson has been dealing with, I think Justin Jefferson has had such an uphill battle, more than people realize. And him getting to be where he is now and having that kind of production, to me, him doing that is more, I don't want to say more impressive than what Deebo's done this season, but the fact that he's done it without that supporting cast, and despite everything around him crumbling, he's still that guy no matter what. To me, you got to give Justin Jefferson a hell of a lot of credit for putting together what he's put together. I still think Deebo's a better football player, but I'd be lying if I said, Deebo Samuel's so much better than Justin Jefferson that you have to take him over him. Like, look, I think for certain teams, Justin Jefferson might fit what they're doing better. But like I said, I'm a Deebo guy. I'm going to take Deebo, but Justin Jefferson deserves a lot of credit. He deserves all the accolades and how everyone's talking about him, he's worthy of that.
I'm not going to take away anything from Justin Jefferson, right? I think Justin Jefferson's an elite
Well,
receiver,
and
but
hey, I mean, I'm just trying to be positive for Justin Jefferson, right? This is a
I get it. I get it. I
49ers.
get it.
This is a
Hmm.
49ers, perspective, and I think too much we don't look at the rest of the league and realize, you got to go and look around what's happening with the text of the rest of the league. Even a guy like CeeDee Lamb is in such a better position than Justin Jefferson was. Like, I mean, imagine if they were playing Justin Jefferson, the 49ers, this week instead of CeeDee Lamb. Like, I'd be way more terrified than a guy, than Justin
Obviously,
Jefferson,
obviously.
right?
I mean,
But
the thing the thing with CeeDee Lamb in his whole situation is he has two other guys, one healthy, that the
right,
Cowboys and Dak Prescott like to target more in Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup.
yeah,
Then so nice he becomes that third option. Whereas obviously we have Thielen, but Justin Jefferson had an amazing season this year, even with Thielen. But Thielen missed some time, so did Dalvin Cook. But obviously the quarterback play, like I keep mentioning. But when you just look at the stats, receiving stats, just alone, Justin Jefferson, obviously 1,600 yards, 10 touchdowns. And then Deebo, 1,040 yards and 6 touchdowns. But we're not taking into the factor of what Deebo does in the backfield. So when I just look at it from that perspective, and Deebo, I don't think, even in Kyle Shanahan's system, obviously Justin Jefferson would probably put up amazing numbers in Justin Jefferson, in Kyle Shanahan's system, but he wouldn't be able to do the same things that Deebo does in the
no,
backfield. Not even close. He
no,
wouldn't be
no
able to
one,
have the
no
same
one,
productivity
no one
as
besides
Deebo does.
Cordero Patterson would be able to do the kind
Yeah,
of stuff that Debo does, and Patterson wouldn't do it as well as he does it.
exactly. So when I take into that consideration, Deebo was that 200 yards from having same stats as Justin Jefferson and a couple of more receiving touchdowns. And he would have had similar stats to Justin Jefferson, but the only reason he didn't was
Right.
because he gets used in the backfield, and that's why he just doesn't have the same stats. When I look at how close that is, the margin, how close the margin is, I'm like, okay, it's similar, but the only reason Deebo doesn't have similar, even a little bit better stats than Justin Jefferson as a receiver is because he gets used in a different way. So just for me
Right.
personally, I would take Deebo, but I think Justin Jefferson is an amazing player. Not to take anything away from Justin Jefferson is easily, in my opinion, a top 7. You can even argue top 5 receiver in football because Justin Jefferson, just how well he's played this season, and even his rookie year, he's improved his numbers. But for me
Yeah.
personally, I would
Well,
just take Deebo.
from here on out, I mean, in terms of guys I would want moving forward as my wide receivers, there's a less than a handful of guys I would want over Justin Jefferson right now. So, um, yeah, he's an elite guy. I'm excited to watch him for years to come. And
Yeah.
I think, with Jefferson and Debo, they're just so stylistically different. It's really hard to compare the two, right? Justin Jefferson, even though he's not too similar to Devontae Adams, they play like that similar sort of role, right? Um, that's what I see Justin Jefferson more as. Although I'm excited to see um, his career progress and him, keep getting better. But yeah, I look, they're both great football players. I don't think you're going wrong with either one, and I think both of us can agree on that. That hey, both these guys are elite of the elite in terms of young
Yeah.
receivers.
Definitely. Well, moving on to the next topic. Rams game, week 18. What a game. That was like the first
Oh,
time, like, one thing like is like when the Niners, like week 3, for example, Niners need Mason Crosby to miss a field goal, and he makes it. Another week you see, the Vikings and the Cardinals play, then Joseph misses a field goal. And the Cardinals with like miracles, those type of, not miracles, but those type of, fortunate situations happen for one team, and like another misfortunate situation happens for the opposite team. But like for the Niners, I've never seen that happen. At least as an Niners fan, I've never seen, like, I've seen the opposite, right? For like as a Rams, obviously I'm not a Rams fan, but like as a Niners fan, we've seen the opposite where the Niners are up in games and then they'll just completely, like, second half is like what happened. The Niners only put up 7, and the opposing team put up like 14 and 21 points. Couple of games that come to mind. CJ Beathard was the quarterback. I think it was Thursday Night Football in Lambeau. We're up. We're killing them at halftime. We end up losing. And we end up losing. Couldn't do nothing on offense in the second half. The Giants game, Monday Night Football. Eli Manning, obviously, he was struggling in New York, and people were considering benching him. And, that was the whole conversation. We're up, Nick Mullins, and then we lose. And it was just, I've seen the other side of it, but now it's kind of like, okay, now the Niners are down, and then the Niners get it done. But what was your whole thoughts on the Rams game, and what was your reaction throughout the game?
Well, I certainly thought the season was over about midway through the second quarter. That's where I was. I was like, this is done. It's time to just start getting ready to write my article trashing the 49ers for all the awful decisions they made during the offseason. But no, really what I was thinking was the Rams, I felt like those 17 points, you look at them, everything that could go right was going right for the Rams in the sense that I think the 49ers were playing very good football, especially defensively up until that point. But Matthew Stafford was just making plays that you can't overcome as a defense. You can only do so much as a defense until an offense takes over. And I think that's what was happening early on as the 49ers defense was playing good in coverage, maybe not as good with the pass rush early on, but I felt their coverage is good enough that they should have been able to hold up better. But hey, Matthew Stafford was just throwing some dots, and sometimes you just can't beat that. Then I always felt like during that second quarter and halftime that the 49ers hadn't got their game plan going how they wanted to. They didn't dominate the line of scrimmage. Like I said, in the pass rush, especially in that first half, I feel like they didn't. The offensive line, I didn't feel like they did. And then they just had a different attitude about it from that field goal drive going into half on. Just a completely different attitude, different mindset, and one that they probably should have had all game. But, sometimes stuff happens fast in a game, and suddenly you're down 17-0, right? But what I loved from Kyle specifically most from this game, because I thought if anyone – if there was anything I learned about anyone, it was Kyle, in the sense that Kyle responded really well to being down 17-0. He didn't panic. He stuck with his game plan, or the game plan that was working. And they just kept running the ball. That's something that we haven't seen Kyle do before in that kind of way, where he goes on that drive that eventually ends with the Deebo throwing touchdown, right? And they ran it 10 times up until then. Usually the Kyle Shanahan I knew would not have done that. He would have thrown the ball. He would have put the ball in Jimmy's hands.
He would have completely abandoned the run and would have just started throwing with Jimmy Garoppolo. A disaster.
Not even abandon Amin, but I think the one thing that Kyle, the one thing Kyle might say that he feels like he's made mistakes on in the past, or at least I think he feels this way based off everything we know, is that often when the 49ers do very well and when they kill teams and put them out of their misery, Kyle's like a shark, right? He smells blood in the water and the frenzy doesn't stop. Sometimes he gets away from that and he gets unsure of himself and he starts thinking, well, they think, they know I can do this well. They know I'll keep doing this if I can do this well. So I should try something.
A little bit.
Exactly. Kyle's a classic overthinker. And I think in this game, he just didn't overthink it. He did what was working and he kept pounding the rock and stuck with it. I just thought this was a masterclass from Kyle in the sense that whether he adjusted on the fly or responded well to that 17-0 deficit, whatever way it was, this was, for everyone who questioned Kyle before in his decision making, you could still question it, but that should have made you feel a lot more confident about Kyle moving forward as a head decision maker. It certainly gave me a lot more confidence in Kyle because that was just something I hadn't seen from Kyle in that sort of way before. There were games where they come down from deficits, right? There are games where they hold on to leads, but I've never seen Kyle just demoralize a team physically the way he did the Rams. And you just wish he would be confident against every team that way, right?
I think exactly.
Part of that
against every team, not just the Rams.
And that's part of it too, Amin, is that maybe he has a certain level of comfort against the Rams. He's played them so many times. He knows what he wants to do, and he knows what the reactions are going to be. So him overthinking himself just doesn't work. He can't allow himself to do that, right? I'm an overthinker myself, right? And I think in that sort of situation where you have so much comfort and you know that they already know what you're doing, you're not going to be trying to overthink it because you just want to simplify what you're doing and be the best at it instead of trying to overcome what you already do well, right? I think Kyle, he was like a shark. He smelled blood, and man, he went into a freaking frenzy. I mean, if Kyle can continue to do this sort of thing, and this isn't just a one-off experience for him, and not just because it was the Rams, Kyle will not just be this offensive guru. He'll be one of the most elite head coaches in the NFL for years to come. I honestly believe this is one of those games that gave me so much hope for Kyle moving forward in his progression, because I mean, he is a young coach. He's not even 50 years old. I mean, so this is a guy who can still learn and grow as a head coach, even though we know he has a big ego. But yeah, I think from this Rams game, look, from the player's perspective, from what we saw on the field, Jimmy Garoppolo, he's that same guy, right? He's always that same guy. He kind of never shifts. And I think the funny thing was, up until that Tennessee Titans game, he hadn't had any games like this, right? Or at least not for a long period of time. I mean, I'm not the most positive Jimmy Garoppolo guy, but I was saying he was playing some of his better football, at least since. And I think at the time I was probably right.
I remember. Yeah, I remember that well. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think the point is with something like that with Jimmy, right, is I think we were all expecting him to fail at some point. But the reality was that up until that point, for those 2 months leading up to that Titans game, he was playing good, inspired football. He was not turning the ball over in the way that we've seen in these last few games even. And now he's reverted back to that guy. So, look, Jimmy's very inconsistent throughout the season, throughout a game, throughout a day. He's just the most inconsistent player I've seen in my time. So I'm not surprised that, hey, there's a stretch for 6 weeks where his EPA makes him look like Aaron Rodgers. Then he has 2 games where he does not look like Aaron Rodgers, and he looks more like Tua Tagovailoa. But
you mean Tua turned the ball over?
Oh, Tua, man. Oh, it's a tough one. But look, Jimmy's that same guy. I thought that offense was very good against the Rams. Elijah Mitchell, I am just so impressed by him and the fact that, does he even ever have negative plays? I mean, I mean, look, I know people love Raheem Mostert for those long runs, but Elijah Mitchell,
him into positive gains. Mitchell will get stuck in the backfield, and he'll break a couple of tackles, and he'll get 2 or 3 yards. That's just how that Mitchell can do. Mitchell is a beast. Oh, yeah. Mitchell is a steal. The only reason why, not necessarily one thing that I kind of like, it's not necessarily that I don't like Mitchell, but one thing that I always kind of get a little bit annoyed with when I see Mitchell out there is that you drafted Sherman, and then Sherman with his 3rd round pick. I'm like, this dude is tearing it up. He's a beast.
Yeah.
And then Sherman on the other hand is Sherman's not doing anything.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's Sherman's fault. I think it's more the 49ers. And hey, Sherman came off IR, so maybe he can help them a little in the playoffs if they need that sort of bruiser. But hey, you know who deserves a shout out from this game? And I wrote an article on him, Juwan Jennings, man. What a freaking game from Juwan Jennings. He actually, and I wrote this in my article, people talk about him as a run blocker. He grades out as the 2nd best run blocking receiver in the league. He grades out as the 3rd best run blocker on the 49ers, behind only Trent Williams and Tom Compton. Juwan Jennings, he's everything that they were getting out of Kendrick Bourne from a production perspective, but he's even better skill-wise, and he offers a lot more potential high-end upside. I don't know if he's ever going to be a wide receiver 2 or anything like that one day, but operating in this current offense, he's awesome. And I see people talking about re-signing him. It's good news because the 49ers actually have him as an exclusive rights free agent. So they're pretty much guaranteed to get him back. That's better than just a regular restricted free agent. It's essentially what I believe the Emmanuel Mosley situation was, where you can only pay him a certain amount of money. It's very similar to the NBA mid-level exception, but it's on a restricted basis, so it's a little different. But yeah, a guy like Juwan Jennings, man, a career day for him, and they need to keep getting him involved. He doesn't need to be the focal point of the 49ers offense, but as that 3rd wide receiver, is that ancillary piece, right? That guy's really important to your team. You need to be able to rely on him. And I think this is going to be a good slot matchup, actually, for him against Dallas this upcoming week. So I think he should have good opportunity. But then from the defense,
especially this game with Juwan Jennings, 3rd down, he kind of reminded me of Trent Taylor, obviously a bigger version of Trent Taylor, but on 3rd down, Jimmy to Juwan Jennings. Now, obviously, there was other guys like Ayuk and Deebo who would get the third down, but Juwan Jennings was clutch on third down.
Man, it seems like every time Jennings touches the ball, it's either it's a play they need, a first down, or a conversion, right? It feels like every single time he gets that touch, it's so much more consequential. And that's why I just love watching Juwan Jennings. He's a fun player to watch. Because he's not like as athletically gifted as a Deebo or an Ayuk, but the way he uses his body and how smart he is, in that sort of way, I love seeing players play like that. And then from a defensive perspective, I mean, this secondary is shaping up right at the perfect time. And I mean, look, we all hated on Josh Norman. This team is so much better now that they don't have to deal with him, right? And with a guy like Ambry Thomas finally, getting the opportunity because Emmanuel Mosley's hurt and then improving to the point where once Mosley comes back, you can play both of them. To me, that just worked out in the best sense for the 49ers because if Mosley comes back earlier, Ambry doesn't play as well at certain times, right? We could be starting Josh Norman and Mosley right now, but 49ers are in a great position. And if anything, I think the weakness of their defense is maybe I don't even know what it is at this point. Maybe their defensive line, because they don't have they don't have D Ford next to Nick Bosa, but you know what? Man, they have Arden Key. They have Eric Armstead playing inspired
bro.
He's playing inspired football right now. But not just him. Ebukam, DJ Jones, Contavious Street, Mo Hurst. I mean, I don't think all those guys are elite guys, but when you put that group together as a collection, that's a elite collection of defensive linemen that you'll have the ability to rotate throughout the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, this 49ers defense is peaking at the right time. They don't seem like they have a weakness. People used to criticize the secondary, and really, I think they were overcritical of it because when you look back, it's not like many teams had great passing games, great receiving games against the 49ers. I mean, yeah, they had bad penalties all throughout early in the season, especially, and some at bad moments, certainly. But I mean, what can you complain about with the secondary given what it was, right? I mean, if Tart isn't playing, that's a big loss for me because I really don't know how good Huff is. I mean, he's just
Huff is all over the ball, but just coverage wise sometimes.
He is I don't want to say he's a bum coverage wise, but he's not a player you want out there in coverage snaps. Like you just, I think you might prefer Dante Johnson, honestly, playing those safety coverage snaps. Like you probably want Huff to get that experience, right? And you like him better, not in coverage, right? You want him being that dynamic guy, them using him all over the field, but I really feel like the Niners defense is as good as they've been all season. They're peaking at the absolute right time.
Yeah,
and
especially that defensive line. That defensive line.
Well, but the secondary is. I mean, look, the defense. To me, the defensive line. This is what they should have been all season. I know they're playing great, inspired. They're playing really great right now. Like they deserve credit. But in the same sense, for what the 49ers were paying for to get out of them, I think this is where they should have been. This is the expectation was this or similar to this, right? For me, the secondary doing what they've done in these last 3 weeks and now heading into the playoffs, you have this much of an advantage. To me, that's way bigger than anything the defensive line is doing, even though Eric Armstead playing great football, DJ Jones playing great football, like Arden Key, Ebukam, those guys playing great. That's huge. But, man, this secondary being what it is now, wow. Wow. I just would never expected this. And now that they are here, I was wrong. I mean, straight up, I was wrong about the what they put into the corner position. I think a lot of us were, but me in particular, I'll say it. I was just straight up wrong about Ambry Thomas.
I was a little bit too. Okay, I was trying. There was a couple of guys this game, right? I feel like they heard the trash talking, or me like saying this dude's like, this dude isn't playing up to levels that I expected to play.
One more thing from this game. I mean, one more thing from this game. Kyle freaking Juszczyk. Shout out to Kyle Juszczyk, who replaces Mitch Wishnowsky as the holder when they need it in clutch time. I mean, everyone after they scored the touchdowns like, oh my God, 49ers are going into overtime. I was sitting there holding my breath thinking, I hope they get this freaking kick up. Because,
exactly.
Oh my God, that could have gone bad. So shout out to the human Swiss Army knife, Kyle Juszczyk. You are a freaking baller, Kyle Juszczyk.
I was definitely with you there with Kyle Juszczyk. I was like, oh my God, are they going to make it? Are they going to basically what's going on? He came in clutch.
Well, and Robbie Gold. I mean, Robbie Gold punting, kicking off.
Robbie Gold, punting 40-yard, punt.
Special teams. Shout out special teams. We were so critical of special teams a few weeks ago, and they deserved it. But wow.
But for me, this game was like, obviously, it was a roller coaster ride. It was stressful. It was exciting. But glad the Niners won. But this game, I felt like all the guys that I was like, dude, this dude's not playing well. This dude's not playing to the expectation that I expected to play at. They kind of heard what I said, and they kind of raised their game. Eric Armstead, like $80 million. Eric Armstead, bro, should have just kept Buckner. Eric Armstead, this dude is getting paid $80 million, and he's not doing well, or he's not playing to the level that I expected him to play. For the money he's getting, has 2.5 sacks, creating pressure, helping both out a lot. But overall, there was a lot of guys, Ambry Thomas, there was a lot of guys that were stepping up, John Jennings. But I'm glad the Niners were in the playoffs because that's all you want in this week against Dallas. But there's a lot of guys that stepped up. And the Niners, obviously Kyle Shanahan, glad that he didn't abandon the run. Glad that when the run game wasn't effective, he wasn't like, you know what? The smarter option is to use Jimmy Garoppolo and make him throw 40 times with an injured thumb. I'm glad he did not decide to do that. I'm glad he continued to run the football, and it started getting better and better in the second half. But overall, obviously, it was an emotional roller coaster, but I'm just glad the Niners won, and they pulled it out, and they got to W. Now they're in the playoffs.
Hey, you just got to get in, right? You just got to get in the tournament.
Yep. Well, moving on to the next topic. Good move or bad move? Now, I know this is a Niners show only, but I just want to get your thoughts on some of these, head coaching firings, and if you thought it was a good move or if it was a bad move. Starting off with Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace, good move or bad move?
I mean, let's not spend a lot of time on this one. Good move.
Yeah, this is a good move. The Bears, he should have been gone before the season.
He should have been fired last season.
Yeah, tried to get Justin Fields, thinking things would change, but not. Both Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy should have been gone. And I just want to say sorry to Mitch Trubisky. I'm sorry, Mitch.
I'm not too sorry. I'm not.
Channel with Mitch was the quarterback, but
I mean, I'm not too sorry about Mitch Trubisky. He hasn't proven anything yet.
I mean, but he was a Chicago man. Chicago, what a horrible situation. Like,
the
game that Justin Fields didn't have Matt Nagy as the play caller against the Niners. Justin Fields popped off.
We gave Mitch more crap than he deserved, but he's still not good.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say he's not good, but I would say he's
not
good backup. He's a good backup, right? If you need a guy like a Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt, and you need him to replace Jimmy Garoppolo.
There's like 8 other guys I would prefer over him right now: Joe Flacco, Tyrod Taylor, Gardner Minshew. I mean, there are guys I'd prefer for him. Mitch just isn't that good, man. Look, I know people like him and like his traits, and he's a nice enough guy, but he's just not that good at football.
That's debatable. I mean, I don't know about some of the other guys that will take over him, but that's debatable. But I mean, I respect your opinion. But John Gruden, obviously, good move. You're not gonna really discuss that much. But Vic Fangio, former Niners defensive coordinator, who I personally think the Niners should bring in this Sunday and completely, demote DeMeco Ryans for this specific game.
No, you gotta stick with what you got. You gotta stick with what got you here, Amin.
Defensive coordinator, but. Good move or bad move for the Broncos to get rid of Vic?
I'm not. I'm gonna say it was a bad move in the sense that, look, I think he probably just deserved another chance. Is more where I'm getting at. I think if he was an offensive head coach, he would be getting another chance. But I think teams get impatient. And like, really, to me, the Broncos situation is more about the fact that they don't have an elite, is that they have a bottom 4 quarterback situation in the NFL.
Yep.
That's why they're in the spot they are now. And the fact that they even won as many games as they did with him was impressive. And I think what he was doing with that secondary was, and that defense was special, and it had potential special future. So I could understand them firing him from the perspective that, look, they have a new GM. He wants to bring in his own guy. I'm not surprised that this happened, but in the same sense, if this is a different situation and the GM was there all along, he wouldn't have fired Vic Fangio. I wholeheartedly believe that. I don't think he did anything that was a fireable offense. I think the NFL is just a high pressure league, and anytime you don't win, they're just going to be looking for that excuse to get rid of you, unfortunately. So I think it was just a part of this.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the move. I wouldn't say it's a bad move or a good move. I get why they did it, but Vic Fangio, that whole team, Ekim say did it perfectly. Broncos.
Yeah, he didn't deserve to be fired, Amin, but you can't fault them for firing him.
You can't fault them, right? Because the NFL, you have to perform, and after how many years you got, your team, you built a great team, defensively great team. All the Broncos need is a quarterback. You put Aaron
Just
Rodgers
a competent quarterback, man. Just a
team
confident one.
It just not even a confident. You just need a good quarterback. Imagine if you have a guy like Rodgers or Russell Wilson on that team. I don't think they're gonna go there. But if you had a guy like that,
or Justin Fields,
right? Justin Fields. If you have guys like that, your team would be a better team. You just don't have a quarterback. Drew Lock sucks. Drew Lock, I don't care what. Drew Lock legit is horrible. Forget about just Mitch Trubisky. Drew Lock is worse. Okay, that's why the Broncos are 7-10 this year. It's not because defense this and it's just they don't have a quarterback. But I understand why they did it. But I wouldn't say it's a good move or a bad move. Yeah. Moving on, Joe Judge, Dave Gettleman,
great move. Great move.
Dave Gettleman. Okay,
clean house.
The Chiefs rebuilt their offensive line in one season. Dave Gettleman had 3 seasons to get that offensive line to a good offensive line, to a solid offensive line and protect Daniel Jones. Couldn't do it. Not even to mention the Daniel Jones pick, right? We say Daniel Jones wasn't a bust because Dwayne Haskins, obviously, what happened to Washington. But
I mean, Daniel Jones is a huge freaking bust. What are you talking about?
I'm not saying it like that, right? The only reason he's not getting more crap and people are not criticizing the move even more is because of what happened with Dwayne Haskins, right?
Right. It's not like there was a quarterback taken after him who was so good that it was so crazy.
If Dwayne Haskins was a great quarterback and he was what most people thought he was supposed to be, then obviously people will crap on the Daniel Jones pick more. But the only reason they're not is because, look at what happened with Dwayne Haskins' situation in Washington, how he didn't have that work ethic and how we went out partying and da-da-da-da. That's why people don't crap on this move more. But that Daniel Jones pick was stupid because same thing that the Raiders do. The Raiders got guys you could get in the second round, third round. They get them in the first round. Who the hell drafts Clean and Farrell in the first round? That's the same thing that New York Giants did.
I will say, at least with the Giants' perspective, I don't think Daniel Jones was ever worth that pick, or he should have been picked there in the first place. But if there's going to be any position you go up for, it's quarterback, right? If there's going to be any position you overspend at or overdraft at, I think that's the position to do. But, like you said, they had plenty of opportunities to improve the situation, and it just got worse.
Yeah. And Joe Judge, bro, criticizing guys and saying, guys want to be here. Guys want to be in New York. Mike Zimmer, Rick Spielman.
I think this is a good move. I think this is time for them to go. This whole organization just needs a refresh or restart. They need a different identity, really. They've had Mike Zimmer, Rick Spielman, Stefanski, the younger Kubiak, all those sort of guys in place who've been doing the same sort of thing on both sides of the ball. Ever since Zimmer got here, I mean, they'll change the offensive coordinator every once in a while, but really it's the same philosophy. They're doing the same thing that they've always wanted to do. And they were just never going to change that. It's just never what Zimmer was going to do. And with Spielman, I don't think he necessarily deserved to get fired, but I think if you're going to fire your head coach, you might as well fire your GM too. and just completely start over. I think that's the best way to go about these things.
Yeah. Spielman, obviously, he got some guys like Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, those guys, like,
Some
obviously, some
guys,
late round
yeah.
picks. Guy like Jefferson that you got over, he got some good draft picks, but I get it. They're trying to, fire coach and fire GM, so I get it. They're trying to clean house. I get that. And the last move that was controversial, people were talking about it all over Twitter, was Brian Flores. I think it was a bad move. Unless you get Jim Harbaugh or, a Sean Payne or someone like that, bad move.
Well, I just think, like, you're right. Unless you have someone lined up to take this job who you're so comfortable with and you have no doubts about, and they've already verbally agreed to it, there's no reason to do this sort of thing. Really, to me, this was more a move about the Dolphins' organizational issues, right? I think I saw the rumor on Twitter that Flores wanted Herbert, the GM wanted Tua, and they're sticking with Tua, which is interesting considering they wanted to do everything to get rid of him this offseason for Deshaun Watson, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't really make sense. And I think that whole quarter, there's a lot of other things going on in Miami, but just that quarterback situation, when you talk about it in that sense, it's a tire fire. It's a freaking disaster. Hey, this season it's a good season for the 49ers. I'll say that. I'm not going to get off my take that this is a lost season because I still think you didn't take the most. You didn't make the most of this situation. You didn't optimize your opportunity with Trey Lance. And I mean, yeah, they made the playoffs. But if them winning one regular season game, and I'm talking to 49ers fans right now, if them winning just any one game this season made the difference between you feeling like this was a lost season and it wasn't, there's a bigger issue going on. But, with Brian Flores getting back to that, Amin, I think Brian Flores should get another opportunity right away, and I think he will, in fact, as long as he wants it. Look, he might want to take a year off, and hats off to him if he does, and wait for the right opportunity, because like we've seen with Robert Saleh, I think we all think he's a very good head coach, but who knows how that situation will end up, considering how bad that Jets organization is. But with a guy like Brian Flores, it seemed like a power struggle between him and the GM, and the owner chose the GM. I don't understand that.
I don't understand that either.
I really like the Dolphins GM. I actually do. I think I've heard him speak before. I've listened to his philosophy. I know what his background is. I think he's a good, worthwhile GM. I just don't understand why you couldn't ride out this situation at least one more year. Because in reality, if it was about Tua and you guys just trade for Deshaun Watson in the offseason, what was all the fuss about, right?
Yeah, but I think it was a bad move, honestly. In my opinion, Flores deserved another chance because that only issue with that team was the offensive line. If you fix that up, Tua probably would have more time. Tua is obviously going to get better season by season.
They might be in the playoffs right now.
Yeah, but I think Flores should have got another chance. Unless you get a guy like Jim Harbaugh and a guy like that, and he turns around, you're a playoff team next year, then I'm like, okay, fine, it was the right move. But Brian Flores deserves another chance. I think he should get another chance immediately. But Brian Flores, as it is right now, I think it was a bad move. But that basically wraps up the show. We've already gone 15 minutes. I appreciate you for joining me, Ben. I know we went a little bit over time, but I appreciate it.
No, we're fine. We're getting pretty close to a perfect hour. So, I love round numbers. So this makes me feel good. I mean, I'm feeling very content and happy.
Yeah, but if you haven't already subscribed to Ben's channel, please go do so. The link is in the description. He does Shanalytics every week. Sometimes on Vinny's channel, sometimes on his channel. I think they switch week by week.
We do, yeah. And we'll be doing a Twitter Spaces after this upcoming game, maybe even a pregame one on Friday. But we'll definitely be live Sunday after the game on Twitter Spaces, so make sure you join us, everyone.
Yeah, go check that out also, Twitter Spaces. It's a lot of fun.
After the Cowboys game.
After the Cowboys game. You get, with Twitter Spaces, you get like a lot of things you can learn from Twitter Spaces from different guys that don't have YouTube. So it's a lot of fun in there. Go check that out after the Cowboys game. But go check out Ben's channel, like I said before. And go follow him on Twitter if you haven't already. Both the links are in the description. Go check out his social medias. If you haven't already subbed to my channel, please go do so.
Smash that subscribe button.
It would be greatly appreciated. Hit this video with a like. me and Ben hopefully will be back next Wednesday for another episode of Red and Gold.
Oh yeah, we
I
will.
appreciate everybody for watching. Go Niners. Hopefully they beat the Cowboys and we get it done to advance. But go Niners. Cowboys suck. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.